Hi, thanks for joining me today. Are you finding that once you've joined the step family, loads of people like to interfere and feel they have more say in what goes on in your family than you do as the step parent? Subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell, and I'll let you know every time I post. What you don't realise before you join a step family very often is that you are in fact joining a whole ecosystem that already exists. And it's only when you become a fully involved step parent do you realise that in existence is this whole way of being. There's a culture, there's ways of doing stuff, there's people who help, there are people who consider themselves close part of the family, and this ecosystem is largely hidden from you until you become a part of it. As a step parent, the chances are that you go into it full of optimism, fully expecting everybody to just like you. In the past, you might have had experience of getting on well with everybody, and you cannot see that there's going to be a problem. But once you get into the step family, you come across different viewpoints that aren't necessarily against you as a person, but there are issues and problems to do with the fact that your partner was partnered before and had children, and people bring to their lives their own pasts and histories, and you have no idea what those are. So, it could be that somebody was a stepchild and they know how awful their own step parent was, and so therefore they make assumptions about what the situation is going to be like now. Or people sort of for no rational reasons say things like, well, I'm always on the child's side in a situation like this. For no good reason. There may be no reason to even take sides. But people bring to life their own prejudices. And this is something that is very difficult as a step parent, because you have done nothing to deserve it yourself. You go into situations thinking the best of them. You have no reason to think there's going to be any obstacle at all. But often there are obstacles. And the other thing that you find when you go into a step family and you find this ecosystem already existing is that people feel as though they've got more right than you have to say what goes on in your own house, because after all, the children aren't biologically yours. So people like aunts and uncles or grandparents or friends of the family from the past may think that they know best with regard to dealing with situations with the children. And suddenly you find that actually these people are making decisions about absolutely everything to do in your home. On top of which, it's very difficult to counter, because you don't often know what's said behind your back. So something might start happening and you know nothing about it. And you don't know where it's come from, and you don't know why. It's very difficult, all this. So I think that there are 3 strategies that you can employ to manage this situation. And the first is to put together a communications strategy. Yes, a communications strategy. Because if people know what's happening and that things have been taken care of and people know what to expect, and this keeps people who perhaps like to give themselves permission to interfere a reason to stay away. So, by a communication strategy, I mean this, that in families that evolve, that are not in a step-family situation, communication develops over time, sort of naturally and by accident. And then people know how they communicate inside the home because they know who's going to tell them things, and things become a bit more routine. But in a step-family, no such communication has grown up. You're putting together something later in the child's life. So I would suggest that you look at how you're communicating as a family and with the children and with your partner and with anybody else that is needing communication from the family. I always advocate that you should have family meetings. You don't have to call them meetings. They don't have to look like a meeting, but they are a get-together where things are discussed. It can be over a meal. It can be at any time. But they are get-togethers with the specific intention of disseminating information to everybody about plans for the future, how things are going, any news, and sort of support for the family. So, people know what each other are doing. But think about communication in your step family. And if the children know what's happening and when and why, and they feel well informed, they'll be less exposed to being influenced by good-intentioned relatives and friends who might decide they're going to take over that role in some way. The second strategy is to map out the family that you have on a piece of paper with you and your partner's exes, your children from previous relationships, your children from this relationship, brothers and sisters, your partner's brothers and sisters, your ex-partner's brothers and sisters, all the aunts and uncles, and the grandparents, and if relevant, the great-grandparents. Map them out on a sort of family tree. Then get yourself a little marker pen or some sign and go through and work out who you consider your sources of support are from the family. And then do the same for the sources of stress. And sometimes somebody can be a source of support and a source of stress. But this exercise is particularly useful to work out where your sources of support are, because it's those sources of support that may be worth your while cultivating and growing a closer relationship with. Your sources of stress are also worth knowing about, because then you can ring fence them and you can have a bit of a plan about how to manage or deal with them. And that might involve better communication with them so that they become less of a source of stress. There may be things that you can do, but the secret is, in the strategy, is to know who are your sources of stress and who are your sources of support. Often you can find relatives that are there in the background. They are sources of support. They do get on really well with you. They support what's going on, but they're keeping out. But you could bring them in a bit more. Things like that. And the third strategy is to keep things working as good as possible with your partner. Because once you become part of a bigger ecosystem and you find you're part of this kind of much larger sort of group of people, you're sort of you're working with people who are around you all the time, keeping a really close relationship with your partner on matters about planning, what you think about things, what they think about things, having a united front can help you enormously with this. So don't forget your date nights, getting the babysitter along, going out and having a united front as much as possible with your partner. I think that we can't really be prepared for what we're going to find inside the step family before we've joined it, because people don't disclose their preconceptions before you get into the family, and then suddenly you find you're dealing with a lot of surprising opinions and thoughts when you really hadn't expected this. So this is a tricky aspect to deal with. We run workshops, an email response service, sessions, and we write booklets. Have a look at the description box below for links to our social media and website.